Welcome into a special Inside Carolina podcast, reaction, viewing. We're going to talk a few minutes about what we saw for a few minutes of access. Bill Belichick, spring practice. Belichick had a press conference at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You can check out all the coverage of that from Inside Carolina, both the transcript and the video from Sophie. Jason Staples and I were amongst the, 25, 30 folks literally herded into the Keenan football facilities practice fields outside on the turf, not inside on the turf and not on the grass for the most part. But we got an opportunity to look inside Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels. Jason, just overall thoughts on what you saw. Granted, and for folks watching this, you'll see video coverage, you'll see pictures. Wasn't a lot.
Yeah, we definitely didn't get to see inside Bill Belichick, which is what you just said. But I'm grateful for that. And, we are talking about practice. Not the game. We talking about practice, man. And not a whole lot of practice. We didn't get to see a lot. But we did see a few things, and we got to see the tempo. We got to see sort of the way that things were run in terms of the overall atmosphere. And there's no doubt this is a different atmosphere than what we've seen in Chapel Hill before. So, early takeaways, every little thing, every piece of practice you could see is very tightly controlled. Everything is managed to the smallest detail, even how we were herded in and how long we were there, all of that stuff. Everything is very tightly managed, which is what you would expect. The tempo was good as far as I could tell. We weren't there for that long, but even in terms of stretching and all of that, you could see that the energy was high. And then once they got into the initial indie, they're rolling through reps quickly. So, and that's all. Those are all good things. But again, we're not just talking about practice. We're talking about the first day of practice with guys running around in shorts. You learn less from this than what you get from watching the combine. And we all know that the combine can also be a little bit tricky in terms of what actually happens. But for a first day, it's good to get out there and see some of those guys look good on the hoof. Some of them look like they're as advertised athletically. Beyond that, it's a little hard to tell what we're looking at.
Yeah. One thing, and before I forget, we've got a new sponsor.
Not that football.
Check out the video for the new sponsor, Big Game USA.
You think you know North Carolina? It's not just the Smoky Mountains and the Old Well. This is Kenan Stadium, where the Jordan Fly Elite game ball makes its debut and its homecoming. Born to fly, built for Carolina. Snag your Carolina blue today.
Jason, when we got opportunity to see it, we did see some sled work from the offensive line. We did see the quarterbacks make a few throws, which was interesting. Bryce Baker had the first rep that we saw. The offensive line, you had Travion Green out there, massive. Miles McVay out there, massive, and the other guys. I mean, it's hard to take away much, but to your point, these guys, they look like they've come into camp in shape for the most part. And they've obviously worked hard with Moses Cabrera and strength and conditioning staff. But from those limited reps working the sled down the field, what'd you see?
Well, one is I think that the tempo of how quickly they're rotating and how quickly they're going from next group up to get them moving, I think that's actually a little faster. And again, it's a little hard given the number of reps we saw. We're going on pretty low sample size. But they were rolling through quickly and getting those guys moving. Another thing also, the tight ends were with the offensive line.
Yep. And
they were rotating through just like with the offensive line. You can see what they want this team to be, even by how they're dividing up in certain segments. The tight ends were not with the wide receivers.
Yep. And they were attached to the offensive line.
They were attached to the offensive line. The other thing that, again, stood out is if you're scoring at home, one of the things that's interesting to see coming into spring, who takes the first snap with the offensive line? Who takes the first snap in the quarterback room when they start individual drills and that sort of thing? And in both cases, it was Bryce Baker. Yep. So normally what that means is the way that this typically works for college programs and otherwise, especially if you don't have an incumbent starter, the way that this is going to work is they're going to determine who gets to be the first guy to take the reps based on how that guy looks, what he's doing in off-season conditioning. And normally there's a point system or some sort of accountability system to say, okay, this guy's been the best in the weight room. This guy's been the best in our conditioning sessions. When we've graded all this stuff, this guy in the classroom, here's, the number of missed attendances that this guy has, different things like that. That normally gets graded in. I don't know how Belichick is doing that, but my guess is that it was not random, that he was the first guy to take those snaps, which tells you, if you're reading between the lines and you know how this stuff normally works, and you know that Belichick is not the kind of coach who's just going to say, well, let whichever one of them wants to take the first rep, take the first rep. That's not how he's going to do it.
Right.
So
everything is with purpose, and there's a plan.
Everything is with purpose. And some of the other things, I took note that the wide receivers were doing stance and start drills where they're breaking things down to the very basic fundamentals, like the very most basic fundamentals of here's how we want you to stand. Some of that stuff's happening at these different position groups at this stage. Given that, and given that attention to detail, what that tells me is that Bryce Baker has taken care of business so far in his first semester on campus, and is at least putting himself in position to where this coaching staff is going to give him every opportunity.
Yep.
So that's, if nothing else, that's one interesting thing, especially since I think that guy's pretty talented. So if he's able to get those reps and get first team reps and really get acclimated, it could be really interesting for Carolina in that respect.
Yeah, we saw Max Johnson throwing. Belichick was asked in the press conference about Max Johnson. He's working his way back. He's getting better and better every day. Still limited. Most of the quarterbacks had red jerseys on.
Yeah.
And
all
just,
of them did, didn't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think all of them did. Just basically stay away. Stay away from them.
And Max looked healthier than I expected him to,
Yeah.
actually, in terms of watching him move around and put some weight on that leg and all that as he's throwing and all. He actually looked significantly healthier than I expected based on what we kind of gleaned from behind the scenes. So,
right, exactly. A devastating injury for him not too terribly long ago in the grand scheme of things. But he was out there, saw the quarterbacks doing ball security drills. I'm not saying it didn't happen under the last regime, but every practice we saw, I don't recall ever seeing the quarterbacks doing ball security drills. I
don't remember it either. I'm sure they did it at some point, but I will say, we've talked about this in the past off the record, off air. I was of the view that they didn't do ball security stuff and put enough of a premium and do enough ball security stuff in the last regime.
Right.
That was something that I would have preferred to see a little bit more of, just because my view is, if you want to look at who wins games, the one number that determines that the winner and loser of more games than anything else is the turnover margin. Mm-hmm. So the teams that put the ball on the ground more, the teams that have worse ball security, those teams are going to lose more games. And there were too many times under the last coaching staff where you'd see guys out there and they'd be carrying the ball out here. Mm-hmm. And that's something you have to drill and you have to make absolutely automatic, to where a guy just subconsciously, automatically knows that ball's got to be in proper position. And you have to rep that every day, in my view. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's basically what they're doing. And the quarterbacks went through that with the running backs today as the first thing that they did. So not surprised by that, given Belichick's predilections on that front either, but it is worthy of note.
Yeah. Like I said to start with, we got 13 minutes of access. Probably half of that was spent stretching and getting loose and all your basic stretching exercises and hamstring stretches and all that kind of stuff. But
and guys without numbers too. So it's also difficult to assess, how much better does he look physically than that? It's like more of our time at that point, given where we were on the field in some of those, was like, okay, is that Trevion Green there? Is that, okay, that's Green, and beyond that, it was hard to tell at certain points. Once they got on the sled, it was a little easier at times to determine, okay, I know who that is. But, yeah, limited.
One thing that was an interesting question, and Adam Smith in South Carolina asked it of Belichick, is about the numbers or no numbers in practice. And Belichick said that they're not really concerned about that. It's not about color of gloves and jersey numbers and all that. But, Jason, I think there's more to it when you look at it. it is a blank slate, but it is also all about the team and not about the individual. Your take on that before we get out of here?
Well, I mean, we all know the connection between Belichick and Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells famously stripped the numbers off the jerseys when he was in Dallas. Why? Because the guys had to go out there and earn those numbers, and it was about the Dallas Cowboys. You want to be recognized as an individual, then you need to stand out as tough enough to earn your number. I would put dollars to donuts that Bill Belichick is using exactly the same messaging as a guy who was essentially his mentor at that time. He was doing that in the NFL. You got to go in and you got to earn your number. And guys who aren't tough enough and all that, and maybe you don't deserve to have a numbered North Carolina jersey. Maybe you just stay with the North Carolina practice jersey that doesn't have any numbers. One way we'll know for sure whether that's exactly how this is working is some guys might start getting numbers before others.
That'll be an interesting take. And do they get the number they've had?
That's the other question, right? Who gets to earn what numbers? So, and this is, I see this as a representation of a completely fresh start. This is we are boiling this down. We don't care who any of you are. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you came from. I don't care that you're a 2 or 3 year starter here. You didn't start under me. What matters is that this is North Carolina football. North Carolina football is going to go the way that I want it to go. And right now, you are North Carolina football participant, and you don't even have a number.
Right.
You're just a practice player. Again, I would put a decent wager down that that's basically the motivation here, and that ultimately these guys have to demonstrate their buy-in in order to earn themselves essentially a roster spot, which means you get a number. So Belichick has talked all along about the NFL approach.
Yep.
And what do you have to do in the NFL?
Earn your spot.
You don't have a scholarship that this is guaranteed for next year. You got to go in and you got to make the 53-man roster. And if you ain't on the 53-man roster, then you get to go and try to earn a practice squad spot. But none of that's guaranteed. You might be an 8 or 10 year vet, but you might be on the chopping block if you can't cut the mustard compared to the next guy. And again, this is a way of making that real for these players. This is a way of making it so that they actually feel that I'm competing against this guy over here who has the same, the coaches look at him the same way they look at me right now.
Blank slate. Very different feel at practice at North Carolina. We covered a lot of practices under the previous regime, a significant difference. Granted, a lot shorter time, but still you felt the vibe was very different under Bill Belichick and his staff. That'll do it for Inside Carolina's special reaction show, whatever we want to call it.
We'll call it a blank slate show.
Blank slate. Not a blank slate, though. Check out the nice backdrop we have here. Also, check out our sponsors, Johnny T-Shirt, Congruity, and Big Game USA with the new Jordan balls. I will say that. It's official game balls for North Carolina footballs with the Jordan logo. Check out them. Click on the link at the end of this video. Click on the link in the description and check out Inside Carolina for complete coverage of everything Carolina football in the spring.